All right, so good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And of course, there aren't really classrooms right now. Every one of you is at home, so thank you so much to all our kids, parents, students, educators, and more for joining in on YouTube. Today, we are joined in the heart of downtown Toronto at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada, Canada's largest indoor aquarium. If you joined us yesterday, you would have seen us feed some sand tiger sharks, which is really cool in their dangerous lagoon tank. Today, we are at Ray Bay with Tally, the educator, and Jeremy in the tank as an aquarist. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them and learn a little bit more about our stingray friends. So thank you so much for joining us, Tally, and take it away.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, so my name's Tally. I'm one of the educators here at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. And we're going to be showing you guys today our spotted eagle ray feed and enrichment. Now, right in front of me is our Ray Bay exhibit, which is our second largest exhibit here. You can kind of see a little bit of dangerous lagoon, which you guys might have seen yesterday with our shark feed. Now, in Ray Bay, we have 4 different types of stingrays. So this is one of our southern rays. Her name's Ruby, and she tends to hang out in the deep end here. And our little guys here, which are called Cownose Rays. And these are going to be the ones that we focus on today, our spotted eagle rays. So they can easily be told apart because of their strange looking nose there. Looks a bit like a duck's bill, and we like to call that a rostrum, and all of those spots along their back. Now, Jeremy is going to be feeding and performing a little bit of target training for them. Now, our 4 different types of stingrays usually get fed about 2 to 3 times a day. And this is going to be kind of like breakfast for them. So they're really excited already, as you can see. A lot of the other rays are coming up to check it out. And all of our rays usually get fed in a couple different ways. So we just missed one of our divers who is actually in the deep end, and they are usually feeding our larger stingrays. They tend to hang out in the deeper end, so we actually have a scuba diver down there who will hand feed them. And then our Cownose Rays, these little guys, they're often less picky, so we'll feed them up here. And then our spotted eagle rays, they will tend to be up here as well, so we'll actually feed them up here in the shallow end, which Jeremy is going to be doing. Now, our spotted eagle rays here are very intelligent, and they have learned that if they go down while a southern ray is being fed, that they will sometimes steal their food. And so we've actually started feeding them at the same time as our southern rays in order to combat that. Now, today on the menu, what do we have here? Looks like we have some live clams. What else do we have in there, Jeremy?
Some mackerel. These are the live clams. Little slices of mackerel.
Mackerel.
Last but not least, one of their favorites, some bits of squid.
Some squid, which seems to be a universal favorite within this tank. So they're getting quite a variety today. Usually our stingrays will get some mackerel, some bonito, some squid, some shrimp, some clam tongue. Just depends on the day. We like to change it up. Our Cownose Rays are not picky at all. They will eat whatever is given to them. But a funny thing is that our bigger rays, our southern rays, they will sometimes actually spit the food back out in our divers' faces, just because they really like that squid and shrimp there, and they don't really want anything else. I find that pretty funny. Jeremy probably doesn't think it's that funny. Now, our spotted eagle rays, because they are so intelligent, we also like to perform a little bit of enrichment with them. So basically, we like to give them small tasks or puzzles in order to kind of keep their brains stimulated, probably similar to what you guys are doing at home right now while you're off in school. But Jeremy, do you want to hold up that target there? So in his hand here, he has a piece of PVC pipe, just a regular elbow joint that we found somewhere in the back. You guys might actually have some at home. And we actually use it as a target. So our spotted eagle rays, as you can see one coming up right now, they have to touch their nose or their rostrum to that pipe, and then they get rewarded with food. So this is a form of target training. And we actually do this with quite a lot of the animals here at Ripley's, including the Bonnethead sharks, which we have inside this exhibit, with our octopus. with our turtles, and also with our nurse sharks. So the reason that we do that with some of our animals is because it makes sure that our animals get very comfortable with coming up to a diver or to an aquarist and coming up to a target on their own as well. So if we ever need them for a vet checkup or just to kind of get some extra food into them, it's pretty easy to get our animals to come right over to them once they're comfortable and once they're target trained. Now, as you can see in that bucket there, Jeremy, do you want to bring that over? It's actually divided into 3 compartments here. So the larger compartment is for our largest spotted eagle ray. We have 1 female and 2 males. That one right there, right behind Jeremy, that is our largest. She's the female. And then we have 2 males. Here's one here. They're just a little bit smaller. And Jeremy has to be able to identify each one in order to make sure he's giving them the right amount of food. So the males, they're around the same size, but their spots actually look a little bit different. Now, spotted eagle rays, the spotted patterns there are actually pretty unique to each ray. It's kind of similar to our fingerprints. So no 2 rays are going to have the same spot pattern. The one male, his spots are a little bit more faded than the other male, so that's how they can easily identify which one they're feeding. So you'll see on the bucket there, it might be a little hard to see on camera, but it says small male, big male, and then the female there. So he's just trying to make sure which one is which, so that we're giving the same amount of food that's allotted for them. Now, a little bit about our rays inside this tank. So our spotted eagle rays came to us in, I think, 2016 in the summer. And I believe they came to us from 2 other Ripley's aquariums, actually. So one of them was born in Tennessee in 2013, the smallest male. And the 2 others, I believe, came from Florida. So the reason that we were able to get them from other aquariums is because Ripley's is AZA accredited. So that means the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And because we're kind of part of that association, we can actually trade and give animals to other aquariums throughout North America. So typically this will help to kind of widen up a gene pool. And if we're giving animals that might be born at one of our exhibits to another aquarium, it kind of defeats the need to go and hunt for animals in the wild for captivity. So that is something that we will frequently be doing. We just recently opened up a new exhibit called Shipwrecks, and we actually got a lot of our animals from other aquariums as well while doing that. Now, our spotted eagle rays here, they can be found pretty much all over the world where there's warm waters. They can be found in the Indo-Pacific as well as the Atlantic, usually in shallower waters around coral reefs. So the biggest one I think that was ever found in the wild was actually over 500 pounds. So that was over 5 meters long, including that tail there. So obviously ours have quite a bit of growing to do. They're quite young. We only estimate they're probably around 6 years old or 7 years old at this point. So we're anxious to see how big they can actually get within our exhibit here. Now, the females are usually a bit bigger. That's to account for mating. So they can have babies usually around 1 to 4 every single year. Scientists don't know a whole lot about their reproduction, but they're thought to be pregnant for about a year. And they can do that. We haven't seen ours reproduce yet because, as I mentioned, they are quite young, but I can show you guys actually one of our babies from a different species. He's right over here. You might see him popping around in the little corner there. He's about 2 months old, and that's from one of our Cownose Rays. So we'll frequently get babies from that species, and so we're hoping to see that maybe we'll get some spotted eagle ray ones in the future, but it might be a little too early to tell. Now, spotted eagle rays, they look quite different from the other types of rays in this tank, especially because of that rostrum that I mentioned. So that's that nose there. They get their name because it looks kind of like a duck's bill. And so they'll actually use it like a shovel in order to dig within the sand. And they'll find things like bivalves and crustaceans and clams, anything that they are trying to eat that they can kind of shovel into their mouth from the sand. Now, stingrays, you might be thinking of their tail. So a lot of people seem to think that it's actually the tail on these guys that will sting you, but that is not the case. It is something called a barb or a venomous spine. And it's actually right at the base of their tail, so where their tail meets the body. Now, with the spotted eagle rays, they can actually have up to 6 barbs. So that's pretty interesting. Usually they only have about 1. And it's a really big misconception that our stingrays will want to sting you in the wild if you ever encounter them, or that our divers are ever unsafe here at the aquarium. They're very careful with what they want to use those for. Typically, if something is trying to eat them, or if it's a life or death situation, that's when they're going to defend themselves using that barb. But once they use it, they have to wait about 3 to 6 months for it to grow back, and they don't really have anything else to defend themselves. So they're going to be very careful on what to use that for. Now, Jeremy, do we have any barbs here in this tank?
Certainly do. But what we do is we trim them down a little bit.
Yeah, so what he said is that we do have barbs in here, but we actually trim them down a little bit. So we do that to make sure that our guests are safe, and also for our divers, just so that there's no accidents in here. But like we mentioned, these guys are very friendly. They're not going to want to use those on you unless you're doing something to threaten them. Now, the reason that I said we do that to keep our guests safe is because you guys can actually touch the stingrays next time that you're at the aquarium. This is actually a touching exhibit. And as you can see, our stingrays are very friendly. They love going up to people for a little pat. Now, some other really cool things about our eagle rays here is that they've actually been seen in the wild jumping right out of the water, just kind of like a whale breaching. But we don't really know why they do that at this point. Not a lot of research has been done on it. They assume it might be maybe to hasten birth, maybe to get parasites off their bodies, but there's still a little bit of work that needs to be done in order to figure out why they do that. They haven't done that at the aquarium, thankfully, but time will tell. And one other cool thing about our rays, not just our spotted eagle rays, but actually all of the stingrays in this tank, is that they have a very cool 6th sense. So they have something called electroreception. And that essentially means that they have these little pores that allow them to kind of pick up on the electrical currents that are around them. Usually any muscle movements or heartbeats of the animals that are surrounding them in the water. So this can help them maybe to find food if they can't see very well, if it's deeper or if it's murkier water, but also if there's any predators that are coming up. So that's a very useful gift for them. But there's actually another animal in here that uses that. I haven't seen them come up because they might be a little shy in the deep end right now, but it's our bonnethead sharks. So we actually have 5 little sharks in here. They look just like baby hammerheads. People always think that there's hammerheads inside this tank, and that is not entirely wrong. They're actually the 2nd smallest member of the hammerhead family. So they're fully grown. I would love if one of them would come up right now so I could show you guys. But I think they're a little camera shy this morning, so I'll have to keep an eye out for them.
Yeah.
Now they're actually another one of the animals that is target trained here as well. So we'll have to see if they'll come up, and I'll show you guys them.
Fingers crossed.
They never seem to come up when we want them to, but that could be because they're usually fed earlier in the morning. So they were already fed this morning. They don't really have a need to come up here unless they're getting food. I can see one coming up from the deep end on the far side, so maybe she'll come over. And a really cool thing about our bonnetheads is that they were actually all named after Ontario shipwrecks, which is pretty cool. So we do like to have a little bit of creativity when it comes to that. The reason that we have those identifiers is not because we want to name our animals like their pets, but it's more just because we want to be able to identify them during feeding time to make sure that not one shark is just coming up for all of the food. Now, there's also a lot of fish in here, as you can see. So there's some Bermuda chubs, there's some yellow-tailed snappers. They shouldn't be inside this tank, actually. A funny story about them. So when we first opened, they were kind of planned to go into our dangerous lagoon exhibit. If you've been here, you've probably seen lots of yellow-tailed snappers within that tunnel. And we temporarily decided to put them in here. We were just doing some last-minute adjustments to our dangerous lagoon tunnel. And then we found out it is very difficult to catch a very healthy fish. They're extremely fast, and they've just kind of remained inside this tank ever since. I think we gave up on trying to put them in there a few years ago. But they've been very happy in here. They're getting lots of food. However, Jeremy, in the last 6 years, since the fish have been in there, have you guys ever once fed them? Not once. That might seem strange, but our stingrays are extremely messy eaters. They're always dropping food everywhere. And so the fish that are in here are probably about 3 times bigger than the ones that are inside Dangerous Lagoon right now. So they're getting plenty of food within this tank without us having to directly feed them. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the animals that we have here at the aquarium are not getting the protection that they need in order to survive in the wild. So our spotted eagle rays here, they're actually considered near threatened by the IUCN, which is a company that essentially likes to test out the populations of different species in order to see how viable they are and how well they can survive in the future, to see kind of how we need to protect them. Now, they're near threatened, which means that they might be threatened with extinction in the future unless things change for them. Some of the big threats for them are boating accidents. They tend to hang out in shallower waters, so a lot of the times they might get stuck with that. Bycatch, they have really long tails that can easily get caught in nets, so they might get mistaken for some other fish when we're pulling up large fishing nets. And also just overfishing. There are some cultures that do eat stingrays, and their tails, I believe, especially those venomous spines, can actually be used kind of as hunting trophies for some people. So if you guys want to help out our animals here at the aquarium, we encourage you guys to educate yourself while you are at home from school. As you can see, if you guys are joining us here today, that's an excellent start. But one other thing that you guys can do is, if you are grocery shopping within the next few weeks, maybe just take an extra couple seconds to read the label of the fish that you are buying. We like to support sustainably caught fish. So for example, ones that might have a little logo called MSC or OceanWise, that means that they were caught in a way that can ensure their long-term viability in the wild, so that we can help protect these guys a little bit more. Now, Jesse, should we turn it over to questions?
Well, we've got 60 people who've been tuning in on YouTube from over 5 states, 3 provinces across Canada and the US. So I think it's as good a time as any, if that's good with you.
Yeah, perfect.
Fantastic. So again, for anyone who hasn't identified themselves on YouTube, just let me know where you're joining from. Type in questions and we're going to take as many as we can. But I'd like to start off with a question from Emily in Pennsylvania, who wants to know how long rays usually live.
Hi, Emily. So it depends on the type of ray. So our spotted eagle rays here, there's not a whole lot of concrete evidence as to how long they live. We estimate it's usually around 25 years old. And that goes the same for our southern rays and our big rough-tailed rays that we won't get a chance to see. They're actually at the deep end right now. I believe that most of ours are fully grown, our southern rays. However, they're not at that point yet. So about 25 years, I would say.
Fantastic. All right, Theodore wants to know if the little rays go to the deep end, and you could interpret this as the Cownose Rays or the babies. Are they going to the deepest part of the tank there or not?
So our Cownose Rays definitely go in the deep end. You can see a few of them going in right now. However, I like to call them the little pigs of this tank. So they kind of tend to hang out wherever there's food. Right now, that's around Jeremy. So that's usually where they'll be. If we're feeding the bigger stingrays in the deep end, all of the Cownose Rays will be down there trying to take food from our southern rays. As for our little baby over here, he was born in the deep end, but the only reason that we're actually preventing him from going into the deep end right now is because he gets a different diet. He gets smaller food. We want to make sure he's really nice and healthy. He grows up big and strong before we kind of put him in here with the bigger rays. It's not to say that the other rays might hurt him, but he's a bit of a clumsier swimmer, so we don't want him to get into any trouble in the deep end.
Fantastic. All right. Chloe in Virginia wants to know, do the stingrays have teeth?
Hi, Chloe. Yeah, they definitely have teeth. They're not sharp. However, they're much flatter. They're kind of like dental plates. We actually have a jaw back here I can show you. So it might be hard to pick up with the glare, but you might be able to see that they're nice and flat. They're used for crushing. So as you can see, Jeremy was actually feeding them hard things like live clams. So they need flatter teeth, not sharper teeth for piercing.
Very cool. All right, we're getting a lot of questions around this theme, but Edie and Henry in Rockwood, Ontario want to know if anyone's ever been stung at the aquarium.
Not to my knowledge. So we do trim back their stingers, so we kind of prevent that from happening. But as I mentioned, they won't want to do that. Our divers are in here feeding them, so they're kind of like the best friends right now. And when people are petting them, the stingrays actually have the option, if they feel threatened, to go back into the deep end. So we're kind of preventing that from ever really being a possibility by keeping up on trimming their barbs and also giving them the option to kind of rest if they feel like it.
Yeah, it's a really well-designed tank for anyone who's ever had a chance to see it or work there or go visit. It's a fantastic place. So hopefully you guys get the chance to do that when this is all said and done. A quick question on trimming the barbs. You've mentioned this a number of times. How do you go about trimming the barbs, and does it hurt the stingrays in any way?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll usually bring the stingrays up to the shallow end in a large net. And it's kind of like a big pair of dog clippers. It looks essentially like pliers. We'll trim that back pretty similar to how you would trim one of your fingernails. So we'll keep up on that maybe every 3 to 6 months, and we'll bring the rays up. We usually do it species by species. So, you know, a couple months we'll do the southern rays, and then the next time we might do the spotted eagle rays. But we also do it as soon as possible for our babies once they're born.
Yeah. So you'd mentioned earlier in the presentation too, and I want to highlight this for people at home, that Ripley's Aquarium of Canada is a Canadian Association of Zoos and Aquariums accredited facility. So if you look for AZA or CAZA on any zoo or aquarium that you're going to run into in whatever community you're in, that means that it's the highest standard of animal care and excellence among the staff. So you can look for that, and that's a great sign so that nothing's happening to animals that people might not want. All right, two great just cute questions. We've got Charles, who in Brantford, Ontario, wants to know if the Rays play any games like hide and seek.
They definitely chase each other around the tank quite frequently. So this is actually a mating behavior that they'll do. Our Cownose Rays, they always seem to be doing this. The males will be chasing the females around. I'm not sure if the females enjoy it or not, because they tend to splash quite a lot when it happens. But that's up to interpretation. But they, it seems, especially with our spotted eagle rays here, people always seem to think that our eagle rays are kind of waving at them as they go past. They're giving out high fives. But you know, I'm sure that they like to entertain themselves in here as much as they can, and that's why we're also giving them little tasks like this, like that PVC pipe that they had to figure out that we weren't going to give them food until they learned to kind of bring that rostrum over.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Sally. All right. Aurora wants to ask if they get, how wide they get. So how big did the stingrays get? And if they are called fins or wings?
So that depends on the person. I tend to call them wings usually, but some aquarists will call them fins. I don't think either one is more technically correct, but correct me there if I'm wrong, Jesse. But I believe with our spotted eagle rays, the one that I mentioned, the largest one that was recorded, it was about 3.3 meters wide. So it was very wide, much smaller than the ones we have here. Our other rays, our Cownose Rays here, like this little guy, he's fully grown, so he's not going to get much wider than that. And our southern rays, the larger pancake-like ones that we saw before, there's one kind of right over by the stairs at her hangout. She's fully grown as well, so they're not going to get much wider. But if you look behind me on the wall here, this is actually the largest manta ray that has ever been recorded. And as you can see, it can get to more than 7 meters wide. So it really just depends on the ray that you're talking about.
Thank you so much for showing that. I was going to ask that right next. All right. Oliver in Calgary wants to know, how do stingrays breathe?
So stingrays, they breathe kind of like fish. They'll bring water in and out through their gills. They have a really cool adaptation. However, I'm going to see if this Cownose Ray will come over. If you look, those little holes there, those aren't actually his eyes. Those are something called a spiracle. So what that's doing is they're bringing water in through those spiracles and out through their gills in order to breathe and kind of pull in that oxygen from the outside water. But that spiracle is really handy because it means that they can rest along the bottom, just like this one here, and they can keep breathing. Unfortunately, our bonnethead sharks over there, they don't have spiracles, so they actually have to keep swimming in order to breathe.
All right. You might have covered this one in the presentation, but Eva in Toronto wants to know about them giving birth. Do they have live birth like some sharks? Do they lay eggs? What's going on?
They actually have live birth, and especially with the Cownose Rays, they look a little bit like burritos when they're born. They're all rolled up with their fins and their tail wrapped around their body, and they'll come out and they'll kind of straighten out as they start swimming around. But yeah, they'll have live births.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Louis in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho wants to know about, do these types of rays live in the same areas in the wild, or are you taking rays from different parts of the world and putting them together in the same tank?
They're mostly from the same areas. A lot of ours are actually from Florida, but usually it's just around warm coastal, shallower waters. So we want to make sure that animals that we're putting in the same exhibit together survive in water that's the same salinity, it's the same temperature, the same pH levels, kind of the same diets as well. So we want to make sure they're fully comfortable when they're inside these exhibits.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Edie and Henry again want to know if these rays could ever be released in the wild, or would they be released in the wild?
So that's definitely something we would want to look into in the future. However, a few of ours would never be able to be released. They're actually rescues. So we saw Ruby earlier in the presentation. You might have noticed, is actually missing half of her tail. She came to us like that. So because she's missing half of her tail, she wouldn't be able to use that barb or that stinger properly, and she wouldn't be able to defend herself in the wild. We have a couple southern rays that actually have curled tails as well. It's just the way that they were born. But probably the same scenario for them. They might not be able to defend themselves. So we do have a few rescues in here that would not likely make it in the wild. So we like to keep them here nice and safe. But it's a little hard to say with the other ones because most of them have been pretty used to living here and getting fed a couple times a day without having to work too hard for their food.
Sounds pretty awesome to me. All right, we're getting this question a lot from groups on YouTube. I'm going to take it specifically from Ethan and Noah in Boston. They want to know how long their tails are.
How long they are. So you can see, I don't know if it picks up on here, but with our spotted eagle ray, it can reach about 2 to 3 times the length of their body. So it's extremely long on our spotted eagle rays. With the Cownose Rays, it's usually just about a foot long, or a couple inches, depending on the ray. And with our southern rays, there is a big one that just swam by. It's a couple feet as well. So it's usually about their body length or longer that tail will reach.
Yeah, fantastic. We haven't got this question, but I always like to highlight it with regards to stingrays and sharks. Are these animals that people need to be afraid of in the wild? Like if you go out, do you need to be nervous about stingrays if you go to the ocean?
No, for sure. So stingrays definitely have a really bad reputation, but like I mentioned, they really don't want to use that barb on anyone. They want to be really careful and selective with what they're using it for because it's basically their only form of defense. If they were to use it, they need to wait another 3 to 6 months for it to grow back. So they're really careful. If you hear of people getting stung by stingrays, it's usually because they might have accidentally stepped on one. Sometimes they'll bury themselves in the sand or they're pretty well camouflaged. And so we encourage people to do something called the stingray shuffle. Jeremy, should we get you to stand up and demonstrate this?
I should.
So if you can see, as Jeremy's making his way through the tank, he's actually shuffling his feet. He's not lifting them from the bottom there. And what he's doing is he's alerting any stingrays that might be in the vicinity to kind of move out of the way or that someone's coming. So they're definitely not something that we need to be afraid of. Same thing goes for sharks. They have a really bad reputation. Okay, that's good, Jeremy. They have a really bad reputation because they look scary and because there's a lot of movies out there that make them seem scary. but we're not part of their natural diet. We're not part of their natural habitat. We need to remember that when we're in the ocean, we're in their home. So you wouldn't approach a wild bear, but people seem to think that sharks are a lot scarier. You just need to give them space. So they're not really looking for us.
Yeah, fantastic. A good analogy I always used to use when I was at the aquarium is more people are killed or attacked every year by coconuts and by vending machines than are by sharks and stingrays. So if you're not worried about getting a Coca-Cola from a vending machine or coconuts, then you really just be respectful of animals. And this is true for any animal that you're ever likely to run into. Tally, this has been fantastic. Again, we're getting more questions pouring in. We could go all day. But what I'm going to do for all our YouTube groups is pass along Ripley's Aquarium's email. I'm going to pass along, sorry, not their email, their website, so you can learn more about their educational programs. I won't inundate you with emails, I promise. But check out their educational programs. Learn from Ocean Wise, which is a Vancouver aquarium initiative, how to get sustainable seafood, which will help protect stingrays and sharks and more. And just get there whenever you can. For any students in the GTA, when Ripley's Aquarium opens back up to the public, it's a really fantastic facility, and I really encourage you to visit. Wherever you may be in Canada and the States, aquariums and zoos are really outstanding facilities. So Tally and Jeremy, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you. And we also encourage people to check out our website, because we are working on a few things that you guys can do from home, such as our shark cam, if you want to check out our sharks from home. But thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass along those links in the YouTube chat bar as well. So look for those in a second. And for now, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye.